Ethan Price was a man who had everything the world said a person could ever want. His name was known in every major city. His face was often on the covers of magazines, speaking about success, wealth, and power. He was a billionaire who had built his empire from the ground up, using sharp decisions, long hours, and an endless drive to win. On the surface, he was admired, respected, even envied. People often thought he lived the perfect life. But what no one knew was that behind the shining smile and expensive suits, Ethan lived with an emptiness that no amount of money could ever fill. That emptiness had a name. Her name was Maya Carter. Years ago, when Ethan was still rising in the business world, Maya had been the light in his life. She was warm, intelligent, and full of dreams. She never cared about his money, only about the person he was when he set aside the world's noise. But as time went on, Ethan had let his ambition take control. Late nights at the office became more important than late nights with her. Promises of dinner dates were broken. Vacations were canceled. Slowly, their love had been buried under meetings, phone calls, and his endless hunger for more. Maya had walked away, not because she stopped loving him, but because she knew she had to protect her own heart. She wanted a partner, not someone who saw her as second to success. And though Ethan had tried at first to win her back, he eventually drowned himself in his work, pretending the pain did not exist. But it never went away. Now, nearly a decade later, Ethan entered a charity gala in New York, not knowing that fate had prepared a cruel but beautiful surprise for him. The hall was glowing with chandeliers, and the sound of violins filled the air. Men in tuxedos and women in flowing gowns moved gracefully between the tables, speaking about business, art, and community projects. Ethan had attended countless events like this, but tonight something felt different. Though he couldn't explain why, he shook hands, offered polite smiles, and gave rehearsed answers to questions about his company. But suddenly, in the middle of it all, his eyes landed on someone who made his breath catch in his throat. Maya. She stood on the far side of the room, speaking to a group of guests. She wore a deep green gown that complemented her smooth, radiant skin. Her hair was styled simply yet elegantly, and she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly who she was. Her smile lit up the space around her, and for Ethan, it was as if time had collapsed. The years between them vanished, and all he saw was the woman he had once loved more than anything. For a moment, he couldn't move. His heart pounded in his chest faster than it ever did during billion-dollar deals. He had faced rival companies, legal battles, and the toughest negotiations in the world, but nothing had ever made him feel as powerless as seeing Maya again. Maya, on the other hand, noticed him too. She felt his gaze before she even looked. When her eyes finally met his, her expression shifted for only a second. A flicker of recognition, a tiny pause in her words. Then, just as quickly, she turned back to the people she was speaking with, her composure unbroken. Ethan's throat tightened. She remembered him, of course she did. But the way she turned away so calmly, it was as if he was just another face in the crowd. To her, he was no longer the man she had once given her heart to. Still, Ethan couldn't stop staring. Memories flooded his mind. The evenings they had spent walking in the park, laughing about nothing. The way she used to sit across from him in their small apartment, sketching ideas for the community center she dreamed of building. The sound of her voice when she whispered that she believed in him, even when he doubted himself. And the way her eyes had looked on the day she walked away, filled with love but also with pain. He remembered that day vividly. She had told him, "Ethan, I can't fight for your time anymore. I need to fight for myself now." And then she left. He had watched her go, thinking he would call her back, that he could fix it later. But later never came. Now here she was, standing in the same room, more radiant than ever. Ethan felt his hands grow restless. Should he approach her? Should he wait? Would she even want to see him? The rest of the night passed in a blur. He moved through conversations, but his mind never left Maya. Finally, during the dinner portion of the gala, he found himself standing a few feet away from her. She was speaking with one of the organizers when their eyes locked again. This time she couldn't avoid him. "Hello, Maya," Ethan said, his voice lower than he expected. She paused, then gave a polite smile. "Hello, Ethan." Her tone was calm, professional. No anger, no excitement, just distance. "It's been a long time," he said. "Yes," she replied simply. "It has." Silence stretched between them for a moment. Ethan wanted to say everything he had held inside for years. that he was sorry, that he never stopped thinking of her, that his life, no matter how successful, always felt incomplete without her. But standing in front of her now, all those words seemed too heavy. "How are you?" he asked finally. "I'm well," Maya answered. Her eyes were steady, unreadable. "And you?" "I'm managing," he said. It wasn't the truth, but it was the only word he could find. Before he could say more, someone called Maya's name from across the room. She excused herself politely, gave him a small nod, and walked away. Ethan stood there, frozen. It had been only a short exchange, but it left him shaken. She was close enough to touch, yet she felt further away than ever. That night, as he returned to his penthouse, Ethan couldn't stop replaying the encounter. He lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking of her smile, her voice, her distance. All the regrets he had buried over the years rose to the surface. He realized with painful clarity that no matter how much time had passed, no matter how many successes he had achieved, he still loved Maya, and now, seeing her again, he knew he couldn't let the chance slip away, but the question remained. After all these years, after all the pain he had caused, would Maya ever allow him back into her heart? Ethan didn't know the answer. But one thing was certain. He was willing to try. That night after the charity gala, Ethan Price sat alone in his penthouse. The city outside sparkled with lights. Cars moved across the streets below, and tall buildings stretched proudly against the sky. Yet inside his home, silence pressed on him like a heavy blanket. The music, the laughter, the shining faces of the gala were gone. All that remained in his mind was one face. Maya. He poured himself a glass of water and sat by the window. He tried to think about work, about the meeting he had the next morning, about the numbers his financial team had shown him, but none of it held his focus. Instead, images of Maya kept appearing before his eyes. The way she had looked in that green gown, the calmness in her voice when she spoke to him, the careful distance she had kept. Ethan had been around many women in his life, women who admired his money, his power, his charm, but none of them had ever touched his soul the way Maya had. None of them had ever made him feel truly seen. Maya had been different from the beginning. She had not cared about his money or his future empire. She cared about him, the young man with dreams, the man who sometimes doubted himself when no one was watching. She had believed in him when success was still only a hope, and he had let her slip away. As he sat in the quiet of his apartment, the memories came back in waves. He remembered their first real date. It had been nothing fancy, just a small cafe near her neighborhood. Maya had ordered tea and Ethan had ordered coffee. He had been nervous, tapping his fingers on the table, unsure of what to say. But Maya had smiled and said, "Relax, Ethan, just be yourself." That had been enough to calm him. She always had that effect on him, grounding him, reminding him of what really mattered. Then came the nights when they would walk in the park, hand in hand, dreaming out loud. Maya had spoken about opening a community center for children who had no place to study after school. She wanted to create a space filled with books, art, and mentors who cared. Ethan had listened, admiring the passion in her voice. Back then, he had promised to support her dream one day, when he had more resources. But as his career grew, his time with her shrank. Business meetings replaced park walks. Phone calls replaced laughter. Maya would wait for him at dinner, but often he would arrive late or not at all. At first, she forgave him, saying she understood. But slowly, disappointment began to build in her eyes. Ethan remembered the day she left more clearly than anything. She had come to his apartment, her bag already packed. He had just returned from a week-long business trip, his phone still buzzing with messages. She stood in the doorway looking at him with eyes that carried both love and pain. "Ethan," she had said softly, "I can't keep doing this. I need someone who chooses me. Not just when it's convenient, but every day. You're building an empire, but I can't be the foundation you forget to look after." He had begged her to stay, promising that things would change, but she had shaken her head. "You don't see it now, but one day you'll understand. Love is not about what you say, it's about where you give your time." And with that, she had walked away. That had been the last real conversation between them. Ethan leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes. He thought about all the years since then. His business had grown beyond his wildest dreams. He had offices around the world, employees who depended on him, and numbers in his bank account that no ordinary person could even imagine. But every night when the noise of the day faded, He always thought of Maya. Her laughter, her voice, her smile. He had tried to move on, of course. He had dated others, but it always ended the same way. He compared them to Maya without meaning to, and in every comparison they fell short, not because they were unworthy, but because no one could ever be her. Now, seeing her again at the gala had reopened wounds he thought had healed. But it had also awakened something else. Hope. She was still out there, still shining, still the woman who once loved him. Maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to show her that he was no longer the same man who had chosen work over her. Meanwhile, across the city, Maya sat in her small but warm apartment. After the gala, she had come home and placed her shoes neatly by the door. She made herself a cup of chamomile tea and sat at her desk, where papers about her community projects were spread out. But her mind wasn't on the papers. It was on Ethan. Seeing him again had been unexpected. For years she had convinced herself that part of her life was over, sealed like a book she would never reopen. But the moment she saw him across the gala hall, her heart had skipped a beat. Memories she thought she had buried came rushing back. The laughter, the dreams, the heartbreak. She shook her head and tried to focus on her work. She was proud of what she had built. With the help of donors and volunteers, she had opened a small community center in her neighborhood. Children came after school to read, do homework, and find encouragement. It wasn't large or fancy, but it was real and it mattered. She had poured her heart into it, just as she had once poured her heart into Ethan. Maya took a deep breath and whispered to herself, "That was the past. He's not part of my present." And yet her chest felt heavy. Back in his penthouse, Ethan finally stood up and walked to his desk. He opened his laptop and searched for Maya's name. It didn't take long to find her community work. There were articles about her projects, photos of her with children, and even interviews where she spoke about her mission. Ethan felt something shift inside him as he read her words. She had done it. She had made her dream come true without him. A wave of pride washed over him, mixed with guilt. He had promised to support her dream one day, but she had gone ahead without his help. She had proved that she didn't need him to succeed. Ethan closed the laptop and stared at the city again. For the first time in years, he admitted the truth to himself. He had failed her, but maybe if life had given him this second chance to see her again, he could at least try to make things right. The memories would not fade. And maybe, just maybe, they weren't meant to. That night, both Ethan and Maya went to sleep in different parts of the same city, their hearts restless with thoughts of the past. They didn't know what the future would bring. But deep down, both of them felt it. Their story was not finished yet. The morning after the gala, Ethan woke up earlier than usual. The sun had barely touched the skyline, but his mind was already awake, restless, filled with thoughts of Maya. Normally, his mornings began with phone calls from assistants, updates on markets, or scheduled meetings with investors. But today felt different. Today, none of that mattered as much as the question that had taken root in his heart. How could he reach her again? Ethan walked to his kitchen, made a cup of coffee, and sat in silence. He thought about their short exchange at the gala. Her polite smile, her steady tone, and the way she had excused herself so quickly. It all played again and again in his head. It was clear she had built walls around her heart. But he also knew her well enough to understand why. He had broken her trust once, and no matter how much time had passed, trust did not return easily. Still, something inside him told him this was his chance, maybe his only chance. If he let it go, she might slip away again, this time forever. Later that afternoon, Ethan called one of his assistants. "Find out everything about Maya Carter's community projects," he instructed. His voice was calm, but inside he felt a strange nervousness. This wasn't about business. This was personal. Within hours, he had folders of information in front of him. Maya had established a small but powerful foundation. She had raised funds, organized events, and built a center that served hundreds of children. She worked with volunteers, teachers, and donors. Her projects had even been covered in local news for the positive changes they brought to struggling neighborhoods. Ethan read every detail carefully. With each page, his admiration grew. Maya had turned her dream into reality. Without shortcuts, without relying on wealth or influence. She had done it through hard work, persistence, and heart. He felt proud of her, but at the same time he felt ashamed. proud because she had achieved what she once dreamed of, ashamed because he had not been there to support her when she needed it most. He closed the folder and whispered to himself, "She deserves better than what I gave her." The following week, Maya was at her community center, walking between tables where children sat doing homework. The walls were covered with colorful posters and drawings. Shelves lined with books created a warm and welcoming space. Volunteers moved around helping students while soft music played in the background. Maya loved this place. Every time she walked through the door, she felt the joy of purpose. This was her dream in motion, the proof that her decision to walk away from Ethan years ago had led her here. She had chosen herself, and through that choice, she had created something that touched many lives. But as she helped a little boy solve a math problem, she heard a familiar voice behind her. Still changing the world one child at a time? Maya froze for a second, then slowly turned. Ethan stood at the doorway, dressed in a simple suit, holding a box of supplies in his hands. His expression carried both hope and caution. Her heart skipped a beat, but she quickly steadied herself. "Ethan," she said, her voice calm but firm, "what are you doing here?" He lifted the box slightly. "I heard your center needed new books and art supplies. I thought I could help." Maya crossed her arms, studying him carefully. "Why?" "Because I should have helped a long time ago," he admitted softly. "And because I want to." She hesitated, unsure of what to say. The children around them were watching curiously, so she decided to keep her tone professional. "Thank you for the supplies. We'll put them to good use." He nodded, placing the box on a nearby table. For a moment, silence stretched between them, filled only by the sound of children whispering. Ethan wanted to say more, but he knew this wasn't the place. "I don't want to disturb your work," he said finally, "but if you'll allow me, I'd like to come back. Not as Ethan Price, the businessman, but as someone who cares about what you're building here." Maya raised an eyebrow. "You expect me to believe that after all these years?" "No," Ethan admitted. "I don't expect you to believe me. But I'm asking for the chance to show you." Her eyes softened for just a second, then hardened again. "We'll see." Over the next several days, Ethan returned to the center. At first, Maya kept her distance, watching him closely. She half expected him to make a grand gesture, to try to impress her with money or donations. But instead, Ethan surprised her. He rolled up his sleeves and worked alongside the volunteers. He read books with the children, helped paint the walls of a classroom, and even carried boxes of supplies when needed. He didn't demand attention, nor did he try to overshadow the work already being done. He was simply present, consistent, and patient. One evening, as the sun set outside, Maya walked into the library room of the center. She found Ethan sitting with a group of children, helping them with a puzzle. His laughter filled the room as he celebrated with them when the puzzle was completed. The sight made something stir in her heart, though she quickly reminded herself to be cautious. After the children left, she finally spoke. "You're not what I expected." Ethan turned to her, smiling faintly. "What did you expect?" "That you'd try to buy your way into this place. Or into my life," she said honestly. He shook his head. "I've bought many things in my life, Maya. But the things that truly matter, the things I lost, I've learned I can't buy them back. All I can do is earn them step by step." Her chest tightened at his words. She wanted to believe him, but memories of their past still whispered in her ear. "Words are easy, Ethan. You've always been good with them. But words don't change the past." "I know," he said quietly. "But maybe actions can change the future." That night, as Maya walked home, her mind was restless. Part of her admired the changes she saw in Ethan. He wasn't the same man she had left years ago. But another part of her was afraid. Afraid that if she opened her heart again, she might end up broken once more. At the same time, Ethan sat in his car outside the center, watching the lights go out one by one. He felt no certainty about the path ahead. All he knew was that he wasn't going to give up. Not this time. Days turned into weeks. Ethan became a regular presence at the center. The children liked him, the volunteers respected him, and even Maya couldn't deny that he was helping in ways that went beyond money. Slowly, the walls around her heart began to show tiny cracks. One afternoon, after a long day at the center, Maya found herself sitting alone in her office. She thought about everything. Her past with Ethan, the pain, the growth, and now this unexpected reunion. She closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "Why now? Why after all these years?" She didn't have the answer. But deep down she knew this was only the beginning. The weeks that followed were unlike anything Maya had expected. At first she thought Ethan would visit the center once or twice, make a gesture of kindness, and then disappear back into his world of wealth and business. But he did not disappear. He kept coming, quietly, steadily, as if the community center had become as important to him as it was to her. Maya told herself not to be impressed. She told herself that people could change their behavior for a short time, but rarely changed who they were. Yet every day Ethan showed up. Her certainty weakened just a little. On Monday mornings, he arrived early to help carry boxes of donated books. He laughed with the volunteers, always making them feel like equals, never like he was above them. On Wednesday afternoons, he sat with the children in the art room, painting and sketching with clumsy strokes that made them giggle. On Fridays, when the center held tutoring sessions, he sat at small desks with students, guiding them through math problems or listening as they read stories aloud. Maya often watched him from a distance. She tried to study his face, searching for signs of insincerity, but instead of the polished, confident man she remembered from years ago, she saw someone different. He was still Ethan Price, the billionaire, the powerful businessman, but here in this space he seemed gentler, almost humble. Still, her heart resisted. She remembered too clearly the lonely nights she had spent waiting for him, the broken promises, the feeling of being second place to his work. Trust was not something she could offer easily. It had taken her years to build herself again, to create a life without him. Letting him in again felt dangerous, like standing on the edge of a cliff. One evening after the children had left, Ethan stayed behind to help clean the classrooms. Maya was stacking books on a shelf when she noticed him wiping paintbrushes at the sink. "You don't have to do that," she said, her voice neutral. He looked over his shoulder and smiled. "I know, but I want to." Maya hesitated, then asked, "Why are you really here, Ethan?" He paused, setting down the brush. For a moment, his expression grew serious. "Because I lost something precious a long time ago. And now that I've been given this chance, I don't want to waste it. I don't expect forgiveness overnight, but I want to prove that I've changed." Maya folded her arms. "You think helping at the center will erase the past?" "No," Ethan said gently. "Nothing can erase it. But maybe actions can write a new chapter." His words hung in the air. Maya wanted to dismiss them, to tell him that she had moved on completely. But her heart betrayed her. Deep down she still cared. That was the truth she didn't want to face. The next week, the center hosted a small event to celebrate its anniversary. Families from the neighborhood gathered, children performed songs, and volunteers shared stories of their work. Ethan stood quietly at the back, applauding with everyone else. During the speeches, one of the parents took the microphone and said, "This center saved my son. He was falling behind in school, but now he's doing better because of the help he gets here. Miss Maya, thank you for believing in these kids." The crowd clapped and Maya smiled, humbled by the gratitude. She glanced at Ethan and caught him watching her, his eyes full of admiration. For a brief second their eyes locked, and Maya felt something stir deep inside her. Later that evening, as the crowd left, Ethan approached her. "You've built something amazing here," he said sincerely. "It wasn't just me," she replied, her tone softening. "It was the volunteers, the donors, the community." "Maybe so," Ethan said, "but none of this would exist without your vision." "You're incredible, Maya." She felt her cheeks warm at his words, but she quickly turned away. Compliments from him were dangerous. They reminded her too much of the past when she had believed his promises. She could not let herself fall so easily again. As days turned into another week, Maya noticed that the children had grown attached to Ethan. They asked about him when he wasn't around, and their faces lit up when he returned. One afternoon, a little girl tugged on Maya's sleeve and whispered, "Miss Maya, is Mr. Ethan your friend?" "He's nice," Maya smiled faintly but didn't answer. Instead, she watched Ethan laughing with a group of boys, helping them build a model out of cardboard. He looked so at ease, so natural, as if this was where he belonged, and yet her heart still carried doubts. One evening, after closing the center, Maya walked home alone. The streets were quiet, the lamps casting soft light on the sidewalk. She thought about Ethan, about how different he seemed now. Could people truly change? Or was this just another side of him that would fade once the novelty wore off? Her phone buzzed with a message. It was from Ethan. "Thank you for letting me be part of the center. I know it may not mean much yet, But it means a lot to me. Maya stared at the words for a long moment before slipping her phone back into her pocket. She didn't reply. She wasn't ready. Meanwhile, in his penthouse, Ethan sat at his desk staring at the city lights. He thought about Maya every moment of the day. He thought about her smile, her strength, her quiet walls that stood tall around her heart. He knew those walls were there because of him, because of the pain he had caused. But he wasn't discouraged. He understood that rebuilding trust would take time, maybe more time than he had ever imagined. Still, he was ready. He had spent years chasing wealth, power, and recognition. None of it had given him peace. Now, for the first time, he felt like he was chasing something truly worth it. Maya. The following weekend, Ethan surprised the center by arranging for new computers to be delivered. Maya frowned when she saw the delivery truck outside. "Ethan," she said firmly, "we don't need this. The center is fine as it is." He raised his hands gently. "I'm not trying to buy your trust, Maya. But I noticed the children struggling with old machines. This isn't about me, it's about them." Her lips tightened. She wanted to reject the gesture. But when she saw the excitement on the children's faces as they discovered the computers, her resistance softened. She sighed. "You always did know how to make things complicated." Ethan smiled faintly. "Maybe, but this time I'm not trying to complicate. I'm trying to support." That night, Maya sat alone in her apartment thinking about everything. She knew her heart was changing even if she didn't want to admit it. She still carried doubts, but the cracks in her walls were growing wider. She whispered to herself, "Don't let him in too easily." Yet deep down, another voice answered, "But what if he's truly different now?" The battle inside her heart continued, and Ethan, lying awake in his penthouse, thought of only one thing. How do I show her that this time? I won't let her down. The walls around Maya's heart were still strong. But with each day, with each act of patience and care, Ethan hoped those walls would slowly begin to fall. The winter wind brushed softly across the city, carrying with it the scent of change. At the community center, the days moved forward with the same rhythm. Children laughing in the classrooms, volunteers bustling around with smiles, and Maya moving gracefully through it all like the heart that kept everything alive. Yet beneath the warmth of the center, there lingered an unspoken tension. Ethan. He was there almost every day now. No longer just a visitor, but almost part of the family of the center. The children adored him. The volunteers respected him, and even the parents had begun to thank him for his kindness. But Maya remained cautious. She could not deny that her heart was softening, but fear still whispered to her. Fear of being hurt again. She often lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, her thoughts torn in two directions. One side told her to protect herself, to keep her walls high and safe. The other side reminded her of the way Ethan looked at her now, with steady eyes that held no lies, no excuses, only patience. One evening, after closing the center, Maya locked the doors and began walking home. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple, and the air was crisp. She did not realize Ethan was walking behind her until she heard his voice. "Do you mind if I walk with you?" Maya turned, a little startled, but she nodded. "It's a free street." They walked in silence for a few blocks, their footsteps echoing softly. Finally, Ethan spoke. "Maya, I know I've said it before, but I need to say it again. I was foolish years ago. I let greed and ambition take me away from what truly mattered. I can't change the past, but I want a chance to build a future. With you, if you'll allow me." Maya's heart tightened. His words were simple, but they reached deep inside her. She stopped walking and turned to face him. "Ethan, you don't understand. I'm not the same woman you left behind. I built this life on my own. I found strength in my pain. And while I can see that you've changed, I can't just forget what happened. Trust isn't a switch I can flip." He nodded slowly, his expression calm but filled with emotion. "I don't expect you to forget. I don't even expect you to forgive me quickly. I just want the chance to stand beside you, even if it takes years to earn your trust back." His sincerity was clear, and it shook Maya more than she wanted to admit. She turned away and continued walking, her heart pounding. Weeks passed and the winter turned colder. The center planned its biggest event of the year, a holiday fundraiser. Maya threw herself into the work, organizing decorations, preparing activities, and making sure every child would feel the joy of the season. Ethan, of course, was by her side through it all. On the night of the fundraiser, the center sparkled with lights. Families gathered in warm coats. Laughter filled the air, and the children performed songs on a small stage. Maya stood at the side, watching with pride. Ethan appeared beside her, holding 2 cups of hot cocoa. He offered one to her. "For you." She hesitated but accepted it. Their hands brushed for a brief moment, and Maya felt a rush of warmth that had nothing to do with the cocoa. As the evening went on, the fundraiser became a beautiful success. Donations poured in, enough to sustain the center for another year. When the final song ended, the children gathered around Maya, hugging her and thanking her. Ethan stood nearby, his eyes shining with admiration. Later, when the crowd began to leave, Maya found herself alone in one of the decorated classrooms. She sat on a chair, exhaustion and emotions mixing inside her. Ethan entered quietly, as if not wanting to disturb her peace. "You did something amazing tonight," he said softly. She looked up at him, her eyes tired but glowing. "We did it. It wasn't just me." He stepped closer, his voice gentle. "Maya, I need to tell you one more thing." Her breath caught in her throat, but she stayed silent, waiting. "I still love you," he said simply. "I never stopped. I lost you once, and it was the greatest mistake of my life. If there's even the smallest chance that you feel something for me, I'll wait as long as it takes. But if your heart truly doesn't want me, then I'll respect that too." The room grew quiet. Maya felt her heart race, her hands trembling slightly. She looked into his eyes and saw no arrogance, no games, only truth. Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. "Ethan, I don't know if I can trust you fully yet, but I can't deny that I still care. You were my first love, and no matter how much I tried to bury it, the feeling never disappeared." Ethan's breath caught. He reached for her hand slowly, carefully giving her every chance to pull away. She did not. "Maya," he whispered, "give me the chance to do it right this time. No lies, no broken promises, just us, building something real." The days after the fundraiser were filled with quiet changes. Maya did not declare her love out loud, but she allowed Ethan closer. They shared small moments, walking home together, drinking coffee in the mornings, laughing with the children at the center. Slowly, her walls began to lower, brick by brick. One snowy afternoon, as they decorated the center for the new year, Maya watched Ethan help a little boy untangle a string of lights. The boy laughed and hugged Ethan tightly when the lights finally shone. In that moment, Maya saw something she had never noticed before. Not the billionaire, not the powerful man, but a man who had learned humility, a man who wanted nothing more than to love and be loved. Her heart softened completely. That evening, as the snow fell outside, Maya and Ethan stood by the window of the center. The world outside looked peaceful, blanketed in white. "Do you ever think about the future?" Ethan asked quietly. Maya smiled faintly. "All the time." "And do you see me in it?" She turned to him, her eyes steady now, no longer filled with doubt. "Yes, I see you in it." Ethan's breath shook with relief. "Maya," she placed her hand over his. "But this time we walk together. No more running ahead, no more leaving me behind. If you want my heart, you have to stand with me through everything." His eyes softened, filled with emotion. "I promise." And for the first time in years, Maya believed him. The snow continued to fall, covering the city in silence. Inside the warm light of the community center, 2 hearts that had once been broken found their way back to each other. It was not a perfect ending. Life was never perfect, but it was real and it was theirs. Maya had made her choice, not out of fear, not out of longing for the past, but out of hope for the future. And Ethan, holding her hand, knew that this time he would never let go.